Hi, my name is Matthew Reynolds. I'm one of the English tutors here at St Anne's. And I'm going to be telling you first of all why St Anne's is a great place to study English and the related joint schools of English and modern languages and classics and English. And then I'll give you a few tips about the admissions process. So the first thing to see about English at St Anne's is that it's big. There are lots of us here. We usually admit about 8 students a year to read single honours English, about 3 for English and modern languages, and maybe 1 or 2 for classics and English. So that's a nice lively bunch of undergraduates. And the undergraduates are also part of the larger community of people working with literature in the college. So we have postgraduate students, that's people who've been undergraduates and are carrying on with further study. We've got postdoctoral fellows, that's people at the start of their academic career. And then there are the tutors, so that's me, my colleagues Sean Gronley and Fred Johnston, who are responsible for the teaching. So because we're a big, diverse community, various things flow from that. First thing I think is that, as you'll have seen from information online, the Oxford English course and the joint school courses are very broad. They give you a lot of choice. You can explore in lots of different directions. And we're able to support you here in St Anne's, whichever direction you want to go in, whether you end up focusing on post-colonial literature or Shakespeare or literature and film or the most modern writing or the earliest writing done in the British Isles. The other thing is that we're not only a big community, we're also a very lively one. So we have visiting scholars coming here, visiting professors. A really important visiting professorship is the Weidenfeld Professor of European Literature. So we've had figures like Umberto Eco, Ali Smith, Elif Shafak here, giving lectures as that professor. We support creative writing. Several members of our community publish fiction and poems. But the final thing I think, and this is perhaps continuous with school but also a bit different, is that at university, obviously there are things I want to teach, your tutors want to teach you things, but at the same time you really importantly learn from the intellectual community that you're part of, including other students. And because we're a very big and diverse community, there are lots of ideas, lots of different perspectives bouncing around for you to learn from here. So that's about why St Anne's is a good place to study. What about the admissions process? So the first thing to say here is that all the details about the admissions process, you can find them on the English faculty's website under undergraduate admissions, so you should go and have a look at that. For me though, I think the main thing for you to ask is what kind of skills, what kind of person are we looking for? Well, obviously we're going to be looking for someone who loves reading. And then beyond that, we're looking for people who can notice things for themselves in what they read, and then can think on the basis of what it is that they've noticed. So when you're preparing really both for the ELAT test and for the interview, if you found writers that you love reading, well, read more widely in them. Think about who related writers might be, read a bit more widely in them, and then think about what it is that you're enjoying, think about what it is that you're discovering to be interested in these writers. During the interview itself, we're really likely to give you a short poem or a short bit of prose to look at and discuss with us in the interview. We're not expecting any specialist knowledge at that point. Really, the exercise there is quite continuous with what you may have done at GCSE with the poetry anthology that you studied. But if you want to prepare for that, an obvious thing to do is to read widely, read small poems. So if you can find a book, a collection of poetry, the Blood Axe book of or Penguin book of 20th century poetry, the Oxford book of English verse, the Penguin book of English verse, just browse it and look at what you find there and ask yourself why the words are put together the way they are, what the poems are doing, as well as just what they're saying. You can also browse poems online. So if you go to a website like poetryfoundation.org or poets.org and just browse what they have there. And again, think about what you like, what you don't like, what's interesting, what's not interesting in the writing that you encounter there. Mainly what the interview consists in is a discussion of what you're finding in what you're reading. Really, obviously we get feedback from people who've been through the interview process, And the thing I most like to read there is when students say that they've really enjoyed the interview because it's been a chance for them to discuss in depth what they've been reading with people who, you know, like me, are also really interested in it. And I hope that's something that you will feel too.
Hello, I'm Professor Martyn Harry, now talking about music at St Anne's, which is a great place to study music. There are basically three of us here. There's myself, Martyn Harry, I'm a composer. It's Alex Buckle, who's a musicologist specialising in early British music and is best known for her work on the funeral music for Richard II. And also John Trail, our director of music, who's a conductor and a composer. We have 4 students a year, but also because St Anne's is a very large, but also very friendly and warm college, there are lots of humanities students here. And I find that the tutorial essays that our students supply are very different from other colleges. They seem to have an extra richness of which suggests their sort of intellectual life here, which is a very vibrant one. The other thing I would say is that we specialise in string orchestras, or rather string playing. So our director of music, John Trail, runs a string orchestra, which we treat rather like a college choir, whereby we have a mixture of St Anne's students, professional musicians, and people from the local community all performing. And the level of the recent Strauss Metamorphosen was just unbelievable. So it's a very distinctive and fantastic aspect of studying here. We have a very, very high intellectual level. So St Anne's students have actually obtained as many firsts as any other college for studying music in the last 10 years. I do think it's something to do with the close-knit nature of our music students. They seem incredibly supportive of each other, and there is this great sort of sense of community. And I think that partly comes from the great cafe called Stacks, and just a sense that St Anne's is a very down-to-earth, unpretentious, very warm and loving place to be. Anyway, I look forward to having a chat with you at some point. I will be available on the open day itself, in fact at the music faculty, but I also look forward to hearing from some of you, maybe to talk about St Anne's and music here.
Hi, I'm Nick Friedman. I'm the Warburg Junior Research Fellow in Law at St Anne's and an Early Career Fellow at the Bonneville Institute of Human Rights. At St Anne's, I teach public law subjects. These are subjects concerned with the government, subjects like constitutional law or human rights law, where we look at the legal rules that structure and limit the exercise of governmental power. And in my research, I'm especially interested in thinking about whether we should apply these rules from constitutional law and human rights law to large corporations, which are similar in some ways to governments and which can also commit serious abuses of power. I also teach a subject called jurisprudence, or the philosophy of law, where we think about what distinguishes legal rules from other kinds of rules, like moral or social rules. We think about whether and when we have an obligation to obey the law. And we think about when, if ever, the state can legitimately use force against us. What are we looking for in an applicant? Well, we're looking for someone who has performed well in their school exams and in our standardized admissions tests. We're also looking for evidence of hard work and ambition. At the interview stage, we might give you a short legal text to read, or have a debate with you about something that's related to the law. We'll ask you a series of questions, and what we're looking for is to see how well you think. How quickly and flexibly do you respond to new information? How well can you see the core issues in a debate? How articulately and persuasively are you able to defend your point of view? What can you do to prepare for your application and interview? Well, the most important thing I want to emphasize is that you do not need to have studied law or had any prior legal experience in order to do well. We're not testing for existing knowledge. We're trying to see how you think. We're not trying to see what it is that you already know. One thing you could do is read some articles from a newspaper dealing with current legal issues, or perhaps go sit in on some hearings at your local court, which is always open to the public. That will help you to learn what kinds of things you would study in your law degree, whether those things are interesting to you, and whether you might want to have a legal career. Another thing you could do is practice having debates on legal or political issues with friends and family, listening very carefully to the arguments that they're making, trying to respond as specifically as you can, and getting used to defending your own arguments with logic and evidence. That will help you to develop the skills that you will need, not only in your interview, but in a career as a practicing lawyer. And with that, I wish you the best of luck for your application.